Shemai Pow, hello everybody. Welcome to my wild Welsh garden. Well, the weather has been quite chilly recently. Disappointing, the weatherman said. So anyway, below the average temperature for this time of year. But it's not been raining. And it is forecast to get warmer, but also wetter. So I thought I would take this opportunity of having a dry afternoon, possibly the last for a while, and take you on a tour of my June wild Welsh garden. So I thought we'd start down here by the back door. These are where I keep all the succulents that have been in the house over the winter. All the azaleas have finished. They'll just be green now for the rest of the year. And then down here, there's a little bit of a container garden going on. Apart from that geranium that isn't in a container, that's one of my pop-up geraniums that's managed to seed itself in a crack in the concrete. Well, my garden is full of baby blue tits. You can hear them before you can see them. They have a sort of little squeaky, raspy sound. And most of the time they're hiding in the bushes, but sometimes they come out to feed or be fed. And they're very cute. And as well as the families of blue tits, I've also had a family of great tits. And a family of nuthatches. It is being a very good year for roses. Look at all the buds on this little climbing rose here on this old gate. Lots and lots of flowers, and they smell lovely. This is a lovely rose under the willow here. Lovely, lovely, delicate pink with an open centre so the bees can get to the food. It's only just started flowering. There's another flower here. And lots of buds to come. And then there's another open rose here, this time with yellow flowers. Again, lots of access for the insects. There's not so many insects around this afternoon because, like I say, it's quite cold. This is a little patch of oxeye daisies. This is a native plant that I planted earlier this year, and there is actually a fly on there. So I'm hoping that these are going to self-seed all over the garden. And Welsh poppies, of course. And this is one of the pots that I potted up with bird's foot trefoil, another native plant. And it seems to be growing really well. It seems to like it here, and it's flowering. And there's more buds to come. So I'm just looking forward to these plants getting bigger and more flowers. This was the bed that had quite a number of granny's bonnets in, and I think I've reduced it to at least a half, I think. And I think I'll probably leave these seed heads now. There's a rambling rose in there, rambling rosy. I think you can just see 2 or 3 flowers there. It's a very deep red. It's a lovely, lovely rose, but lots of buds to come. And then this honeysuckle, it's just getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And the sparrows love to hide in it and squabble. And then here's Gertrude Jekyll, a climbing rose. I don't think she's much good for wildlife at all, really, because it's not an open flower, but it's just lovely. And she is my hero, Gertrude Jekyll, so I just wanted to have her rose in my garden. And this is a lovely rose too. This is Wootton Old Hall. It starts off pale pink, and then as it gets older it gradually gets paler and paler. But it has these open flowers which are good for the insects, and it's very vigorous. And again, lots of buds still to come. Here it is just from the other side, and you can see all the buds against the sky there. And here's Rambling Rosie come on the other side of the trellis. So there's a lovely little flower there. I don't know that these are much good for insects. See, I bought this years ago before I decided to become a wild gardener. This part of the garden has a bit of a woodland feel because it's in the shade now, quite a bit of the day. And there's native plants here. There's foxgloves and sweet Sicily and pink campion. This lovely big bee is enjoying. I still have quite a few little plants to plant out. And then this lovely rose growing up the other side of the arch, which I'm afraid I can't remember the name of. And again, it starts off pink, and then as it gets older it gets lighter and sort of fades almost to white, with again this lovely open centre so that the insects can get in and get to the pollen and nectar. We'll just go back through the arch a minute to this honeysuckle that's still flowering. I can't think how long it's been flowering for. Months. And there's still new flowers to come. These are the flowers that have got little holes in the bottom where the bees have been pinching the nectar. Cheeky little things. And this central bed is what I rather grandly call the orchard, because there's 3 trees in it. There's 2 apple trees and a pear tree, which seem to be growing well. In fact, this apple tree has some apples on it. And there's apples on this tree as well. And then there's strawberries and red currants. And there are some black currants on there, but not very many. And no white currants. And a very few gooseberries. Yeah, so to be honest, the soft fruit does not do very well in this garden, and I don't know why. But I have planted some sunflowers. Not that I can eat sunflowers, but they will look pretty and they'll be good for the birds. And this was also the bed where there were a lot of these granny's bonnets. And I think I've reduced them by about half, and that's where I've put the sunflowers. And then here we are at the top of the garden with the old pond. Lots of plants around, geraniums, all sorts of things. And I have a water lily in flower. The only thing being is that it was supposed to be white, and this is pink. So I think they sent me the wrong one, but as it was about 5 years ago, I don't think I can send it back now. There's not an awful lot going on in the greenhouse, to be honest. My tomatoes all got a horrible virus and I just had to pull them up. And then in this bed behind the greenhouse, I've got rhubarb and then summer raspberries and autumn raspberries, which I'm allowing to go wild. And I don't think I'm going to get many summer raspberries. They didn't grow very well last year. But there does seem to be quite a lot of new shoots, new canes for next year. So I think perhaps, because it was very, very hot and dry in spring last year, I think maybe that affected them. And then all along the back wall is my native hedge, which is getting taller and thicker and wilder, and hopefully even better habitat for birds and insects and all manner of creatures. So I'm just sitting on the chair at the top of the garden, and this is what it looks like from here. It's getting to look pretty wild. There's the angelica there. The flowers have gone over and there's these huge seed heads, great mop heads of seeds, which I hope the birds will eat. So we're just looking along now to the potting shed. This is geranium roseanne, which has just started to flower. This will flower now until the first frost in November, and the insects love it. And this is rose campion. I think this is native. It certainly self-seeds all over the place. And another little climbing rose up the side of the shed, whose name also escapes me. I'm really sorry, I'm not very good at names. And here's a rose campion that's actually flowering, and it seeded itself just in a crack at the bottom of the shed there. And there's some more down there, and a lovely teasel, which self-seeded. And this is just looking down between the two vegetable patches. There's an arch here that has a rose growing over it. This has taken a long time to get going. I'm sure this is its third year. It's got these lovely sort of apricot flowers. And again, lots of buds to come. And at this side, there's a golden hop. And I've finally got round to clearing the vegetable patches and planting all the veg out. And the perennial kale is just growing and growing now I've taken the cage away. Nothing stopping it reaching the sky. And there's my wheelbarrow full of the stuff that I've cleared out. And it's had to stay there. And there's a story behind it, which I will tell you when I get a little bit further around the garden. I'll just sit on this chair for a minute and show you what it looks like from here. And there's that lovely teasel in the way. And then down this side of the path, there are the autumn raspberries, which I'm hoping to be able to harvest from. So down the path I go, and again it gets a bit like a woodland down here, woodlandy feel, with the red campion and the foxgloves. And I'm hoping that eventually this is going to become an arch, but at the moment it's just rather difficult for me to get through. Go over the stepping logs. There are some stepping logs under there, and onto the lawn. So I've come through onto the lawn and I'm just standing in front of the summer house. And there's still a path of sorts coming up this side of the garden. And this side is still meadow. The red clover is still flowering like mad. And the white clover has just started to flower. This is a patch of white clover, so there should be quite a few flowers here in a day or two. This bed is just a great jumble of all sorts of things. There's geraniums, there's phlox, there's thalictrum, there's verbascum, there's a rose down here, the princess I think that's called. There's sweet williams, there's more geraniums, more geraniums. More geraniums than you could shake a stick at. And then on this side another geranium. And this is where I've planted quite a few of the native plants. So there's the oxeye daisies there. And this is feverfew, which has tiny little white daisy flowers. And then all around the pond is the grass that I sowed earlier in the year, which is growing. Over there, down the other side of the new pond, is the reason why there's a barrow full of stuff still left by the vegetable patches. So I need to tell you the compost story really, but we'll look at some nice plants while I'm telling it rather than at the compost heap. But I used to have compost heaps over the road, but over the years they gradually got invaded by things like bindweed and cinquefoil and bramble and nettles and horsetails, and I really didn't want to bring compost from there because I didn't want to introduce any of those things into the garden, because I haven't got those things in the garden and I think I'd prefer to keep them out really. So I decided, I think this was a couple of years ago, I decided I'd better have sort of what was in the garden staying in the garden and what's over the road staying over the road. I bought this compost bin, and it's one of the ones where the lid comes up and you put the compost in the top, and then it has a little door. Here's a little door in the bottom of the front, which you're supposed to be able to lift up and sort of shovel the compost that's been in there for a while out of the bottom. And I bought it because it was recommended. It had very good reviews and it seemed reasonable. And it just fitted exactly in that space. So I thought it was just exactly right. And it's proved to be really, really difficult because it's virtually impossible to shovel the compost out of the bin because the door is really quite small. And it's really awkward to get down that low. And the compost at the bottom is pretty heavy and sort of compacted with everything else on top. So yeah, so I was trying to do that yesterday, and then basically the front came off and it's probably broken. So I don't think it's going to work anymore. And it's no good anyway for my back. I do have a very good chiropractor, but I don't think she'd think much of me shoveling compost out of this compost bin. I'll go back to the pretty flowers while I talk. So I've treated myself to some wooden compost bins, in fact 3 that sort of fit together, and so you can transfer the compost from one to the next to the next. I was telling a friend of mine about this and she did laugh. She didn't seem to think that buying yourself a compost bin was much of a treat at all really. And this is where they're going to go, down the side of the polytunnel, in place of that old coal frame, which is actually being used as a compost heap at the moment. But I can't do anything just yet because on the fence there at the bottom, there is a robin box, and in it there is a robin. So this is the 4th attempt at producing a family. The first nest was in that watering can on the fence there, and they had 4 eggs, 4 babies, and they did fledge, but they weren't flying, they were just hopping around the ground. And I found 2 dead the next day. I don't know what happened to the other 2. But I have seen a fledgling robin in the garden, so they might have got away. The next attempt was in this pot store, in that pot which is lying on its side. And the eggs did hatch, and there were some tiny babies, but they just abandoned them. I don't know what went wrong there. And there was a half-hearted attempt in this tiny little box here at the back of the potting shed, where they've almost built a nest, but there was never been any eggs or babies in there. So yeah, so I obviously don't want to be moving compost and putting up compost bins while the robins are trying to raise a family again. But this is the area, another area which I sowed with meadow grass, and as you can see, the grass is growing. It's going to be a wild area. And there's a bit more going on in the polytunnel. I've got broad beans there, lovely, lovely crimson flowers. Got some climbing beans there, not looking fabulous. Last year's chard, I'm still harvesting, and more broad beans. There's some potatoes behind there. And then this lovely borage, which is self-seeded here. This has these fabulous blue flowers that you can decorate your salads with, or your fruit salad, or put in your drinks. But this is what I found on it the other day. This is a wasp beetle. Now I know that, not because I'm any good at identifying beetles, but because I have an app on my phone called iNaturalist. And you just take a photograph of whatever it is that you found, and you upload it, and it will tell you what it is. And then after a short while, an expert somewhere will confirm it. So I've had it confirmed that that's what it is. And it's a beetle that actually lives in rotten wood. And so I was thinking it won't be very happy in the polytunnel. So I'd taken it over the road and I put it on the bramble there. So there was plenty of nectar and pollen on the bramble for it. And then it could go and find some rotten wood, either to lay its eggs in if it was a female, or to find some females if it was a male. And then on this side I've got some peas. This row here is more of 2, so when that gets a little bit bigger I'll harvest that. And then these are the peas that you just eat the peas of, you pod them. And I think this is early onward, I think. So not ready yet, but I'm looking forward to those. But actually peas never make it into the kitchen, I always just eat them in the polytunnel. The clematis on the arch outside the polytunnel is flowering. And the honeysuckle has gone over now, but now is when it produces these very long viney shoots that produce the flowers for next year. And I don't know if you remember that I said I was training the honeysuckle to grow along the shed. Well, of course, look where all the viney shoots are pointing. So yeah, there's none growing over the shed at all. The honeysuckle has decided it wants to grow in the opposite direction. So at some point I'm going to have to get the ladder out, I think, and just pull those shoots over and tie them into the wires that I've put along the top of the shed. So I'm outside the woodshed, standing by this geranium phaeum with these little bees. And then we just go down the slope. Back to where I started, and we've been all the way round the garden. So thanks for visiting me again in my wild Welsh garden. Hope to see you again. If you're interested in following my exciting adventures while doing my garden, then please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Hwyl fawr!